Basically, what I'm going to set the context is what are we going to cover in terms of next 2 sessions post lunch, and what are the key things that probably you'll be expected to know at the end of those 2 sessions is what I'm going to cover right now. So what is Sunbird-ED? So can someone help me understand what is Sunbird-ED, or what is your understanding of Sunbird-ED? So probably in the interest of the time I can help you. Sunbird-ED is basically a software which is leveraged for capacity building and learning, K-12 education, professional development and content distribution solutions. That's how it has been thought to be. For the case of Diksha, it is more of a K-12 learning. Basically, the school education is the theme, right? So here are some of the examples on how the solution is being leveraged. So the targeted training or the self-driven courses that are being pushed to the users so that they can train through them, they can get the relevant certificates, and also provide the reference materials for the direct learning. So if there is a farmer community where we want to propagate the agricultural practices, how-to videos on the best agricultural practices, then Sunbird-ED is a relevant solution for them. So Diksha is one of them where all of you guys have been part of. So why should someone use Sunbird-ED? What is the user that he's going to get out of it, right? The first one is what is called as a learning apps. So Sunbird-ED offers what is called as a learning apps, which allows users to come and consume the content, get through the learning journey. Okay, that is one of the primary reasons. Asset sourcing. It is also possible that the contents that are supposed to be consumed by the larger audience can also be sourced, which means the content can be created, uploaded and managed. This is the asset sourcing. Launch courses. Courses are general terminology that most of them would be able to understand. Course is basically where you have a users enrolling into the courses, going through the journey of courses, consuming the content, knowing the tracking of the progress gets done, and at the end of the course there is an assessment that gets done as part of the journey, and finally you will get a certification. Content discovery. So one of the major features is actually a content discovery, wherein at least for the case of Diksha, a lot of textbooks comes with a printed QR code, which means any student or a teacher, if he just goes and scans the QR code, should be able to load the content without much of a hassle. So the content discovery is one of the key, observability. So the data stack that Matthew and even Vinu also kind of covered it very briefly. Whatever the user's action is on the platform, everything is data driven. The decisions is data driven. Someone coming from the product mindset, how are these decisions made? What are the user channels? What are the user funnels? Where are your users dropping out? Are your users who are coming onto the platform, are they being transformed into the content play? Are you being able to manage, where are you seeing the friction from the user point of view? So the complete data collection, the telemetry, everything comes in the observability. You have what is called as a progress exhaust and a couple of other things which you will get to see later. Question bank. So one of the key features is, as part of your learning, when you learn through some videos or anything, right? Ultimately, you have to assess the person for his understanding. That is very critical. So the question bank, the ability to have the questions being persisted in the system, which inquiry was what we were talking about, right? The question banks is something that is available. Verifiable credentials. So I have done with all my journey in the learning. Now I need a certificate. I have a textbook which is QR coded. If you want verifiable credentials to be issued to a person for his completed learning journey, that is one of the key features of Sunbird-ED. So this is just a recap of what Vinu had covered as part of your Sunbird-ED architecture. At the top you have a client apps, portal, mobile and desktop and creation portal. Mobile again has 2 different types of apps, Android and iOS. I'm just repeating it. And then we have a couple of front-end libraries, API and dependent BBs. So one of the first agenda that I'm going to cover as post this particular session, which is after lunch, is if in case I want to set up the Sunbird-ED, there are a lot of things that we spoke about, right? Organization, channel, it is quite impressive enough to confuse a user. So how does it all get connected? That is one of the key points. So logically, how does it all come in? How are these things organized? How do you set up a Sunbird-ED portal or even a Sunbird-ED products? That is one of the agendas that we are going to do. So just to put it in a short term, this is what we used to say. So create an organization, onboard your organizational users, identify the taxonomy framework which is relevant for your use case, create a content and just distribute the content. This is a simple journey that anyone can imagine for Sunbird-ED. But what are the things to be done to get this enabled? That is something I'll cover as part of the agenda. So what is a Sunbird-ED user journey? So let's assume I am a very basic user. I don't know what Sunbird-ED is, Diksha is, or any of these implementations are. What am I going to do? I need to onboard myself as a user. I will have to discover the content, play the content, try to see if my progress is getting tracked in a real time or not, and earn my credentials, and I'm happy. So this is a typical simple user journey that any user coming into Sunbird-ED would do. I mean, same happens with Diksha as well. There are other workflows, but this is a basic user journey. The second part is basically what we are saying, the user workflows. This is where a critical user workflows in Diksha along with its API association. So one of them, when Matthew was asking about, one of the gentlemen was asking this question, right? How does the front end connect to back end? What are the relevant APIs? Are Node connecting to this API or the other API? What are the relevance of all of these building blocks? How do they all get connected? This is a session where a lot of these things can get demystified to an extent. So I'll just, the third agenda is what probably Rajesh would cover in. Probably the first two agendas is what I'll be covering in. This will be covered in a later parts. Is how does the code gets organized? So basically everyone would have seen the two primary repos, code repos. One is what is called as a Sunbird-ED portal, the other one is called as Sunbird-ED mobile. This particular repo shares the code for two different applications. One is what is called as a web application, the other one is what is called as a desktop application. Web is something that is available as a link, diksha.gov.in. The desktop application is the one which is like your installer, exe installer. So the primary use case for which this was done was the offline first thinking. Okay, lot of schools, if you take a look at the typical lab environments in the schools, right? They don't have a internet connections, neither they have a jazzy gadgets that most of us would use. So they needed installers. They wanted, the contents to get loaded only once. They could not afford so much of internet bandwidth being there. So with that being kept in mind, desktop application was introduced. Web is basically what you guys get to see, diksha.gov.in. The second one is Sunbird-ED mobile. Sunbird-ED mobile initially was only started with the Android application alone. However, iOS was something that was later got added around 2 years back. So right now we are running the releases for both the applications. Again, it is a single source code from which both the apps are generated. The technology actually enables this. So now I'll get into the what is the technology stack that we are dealing with. Very simple, Angular. Any front-end libraries that are being created is not created within these projects. That is a fundamental rule. Generalize and externalize. What we are saying is, go ahead and create your Angular component library. Publish it to NPM, import the NPM and start using it like every normal user. How would you use your material library? How would you use your jQuery? You don't have much of a, challenges in doing that, right? So you can leverage it in a similar way. So there are quite a lot of components library that comes in. Probably my friend would, deep dive into one of these libraries, how to deal with it and how do we debug and how do we develop.
So this PDF player and all also is part of Angular, right?
So it's all part of Angular. Everything has been written in Angular. Yeah. So there is always a UI rendering part. There is always a business logic part, right? Wherein you are going to contact to a service or you are going to talk to a specific API. You may have to abstract it sometimes, right? It is a common HTTP call. That gets done across multiple clients. So we have written a lot of TypeScript libraries as well. They have a pure TypeScript code, nothing else. Just use it as an NPM package, start leveraging their services. So just the way how Sunbird-ED portal would leverage, the same way Sunbird-ED mobile also leverages. So what we are doing logically with this is, you write the component once, deploy it across 4 different places. Your Android, iOS application, and also a couple of other, the desktop and the portal. All 4 of them share the same UI libraries. So which means your effective development time, which should have ideally been 4x, right? Typically in a project, that's no more a 4x. It's somewhere around 1.6x. Because the 1x is being written for the actual library, all of them would just go and use it and leverage it. Okay, that's been the thinking. Same holds good with the TypeScript library as well. Styling. I think one of the key, this was actually not even in the shape and form that was supposed to be. Okay, there was one specific ask from MHRD wherein the entire portal had to get revamped. And no one liked the UI and it was all boring. UI folks I think would realize, right? UI tends to become very boring after some period of time. So the ability to theme the application, the ability to change the layouts of the application with a very minimalistic engineering change. That is where we started externalizing even the style sheets as well. So that you don't go and invest your effort for every look and feel. So as part of my further sessions, we'll also showcase to you how Diksha was looking like, what is the new version of Diksha, and I will also showcase to you what is the other adopters, how they have leveraged the same Sunbird-ED code in their own way. Because UI generally tells a lot of story, right? If you can build things in a very generalized and externalized way, you can build such solutions in an innumerable number of ways. There is no limits. You don't really need to reinvent your engineering cycle.
That exchange will be required because we might be going for 1.0 enhancement of
the UI, yeah,
okay.
correct.
So that session,
Yeah, I think I'll cover that definitely. So how do we use them? These are all called as a generalized libraries. This is what I have been telling, right? These are all simple npm packages, nothing more, nothing less. All you have to do is go and do a npm install, put the library, it will automatically come in your package.json. Import the libraries just how you would do it for a material or any of the front-end libraries, start leveraging them. Each of these libraries in the GitHub repo comes up with its own responsibilities. How do I set it up? How do I import? What are the import instructions? Everything has been provided as part of that GitHub. Okay, so probably when he does the deep dive, probably he'll help you out on what are the individual instructions. So the next is the broader, the types of contents that are being supported. What are some of the formats? These are some of the formats. So why Sunbird? Why Sunbird-ED? Right? You need to always have a success story, or else it doesn't make sense, right? So some of the success stories that we have seen, Diksha, of course, it's almost like a elder son of Sunbird family, with all of its success and glory. We also have what is called as a IGOT. IGOT is basically a mission karma yogi. So they actually don't leverage Sunbird-ED, but they leverage Sunbird platform. The microservices that we spoke about, they leverage all other building blocks except Sunbird-ED. So they have their own front end. So this also opens up the possibility.
The landing page
of
Karmyogi, then how it is different?
So basically it's a completely a parallel application to Sunbird-ED. They have written their own front-end project. But the underlying platform is pretty much the same. It's knowledge, learn and all of these things.
Okay. So the landing page, then what is the technology they would have used?
They have also used actually React or Angular? Angular. Yeah.
It is the building block, which is where we paint the data to the end user.
Yeah.
So in case of IGOT, as an adopter, the front end is written in a different according to their customization.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is not onboarded into package.
So there is no front end called as Sunbird-ED. UPSMF, the one that I was talking about, here again it's one more replica of Sunbird-ED. Just the way how Diksha is one more replica of Sunbird-ED, UPSMF is one more replica of Sunbird-ED. So here you will get to see lot of things. How can I change the taxonomy?
UPM is used in which cloud? Because this was also under my
Oh, is it?
We were discussing.
So
for cloud,
so this is
Microsoft, right?
This is actually running on GCP.
GCP.
Yeah.
Sorry, GCP.
GCP. So the UP government actually gave the contract to the GCP. Initially, there was a lot of things in the Sunbird-ED was actually done on Azure. So that was our first opportunity, and this particular program where I myself was personally involved as well, where we were able to get this entire infra up and running on the GCP.
So typically, what is the business use case?
So this is actually a capacity building use case,
Capacity building.
wherein the medical fraternity of
Medical,
UP government, gets trained.
Okay.
So this is the Lex. This is one of the older students, if I have to say, in the Sunbird family. It's a product from the Infosys. Now they call it as Wingspan or something. But their underlying platform is still Sunbird. So they still uses the significant part of the Sunbird, but that's a Sunbird for professional development. That's all. So
Sunbird backend building blocks, pretty much not the Sunbird.
so yeah,
Especially observe.
Observe.
Eating is more observe knowledge. Only those two building blocks.
those two building blocks. So if I have to say this is the elder one, this is I got is basically where we use the platform, we leverage the platform of knowledge and learn and other things. Lex in its initial version, as he said, had a lot of dependency on Sunbird. UPSMF is almost a replica again. It's almost like Diksha.
It's like a customization, everything. Sunbird is like building block.
Okay, so
Building block concept.
I had promised for 10 minutes.
So UPMS, who is doing the आपका development team कौन है? Your team or Tarento only?
Tarento, yeah. It's okay. Yeah.
So we can
We are
Okay, so I think we'll break out for the lunch, and thank you for your time, and we'll complete with that. I'll lunch. I know it's pretty difficult to focus once we all had lunch. Yeah, but still I'll try to do my level best to do some justice. This particular session is of a prime importance because this talks about the functional organization of a Sunbird-ED. Lot of jargons, probably if I have to put it across, that we spoke about, right? Organization, channel, tenant, framework, taxonomy, all of these things, how would they connect together is what would get covered here. Okay? There are some specific steps which have been identified, and there is also some references which will be shown in on how to actually think of Sunbird-ED and how should we set it up and what is the fundamental principles on how all of these things would get driven. Okay? Cool. So a small recap, because I had done a 10-minute session. That's the reason I had done it previously, so that I can do a small recap. Sunbird-ED, what does Sunbird-ED offer? A single code base for the mobile app, a single code base for the web app. For the mobile app, it has an Android and iOS being generated from the same code base. And we also have a web app from which you can even generate a portal, which is a web. And the second one is a exe installer, okay, which is a desktop application. So primarily, the technologies that are used is basically Cordova. Cordova is the base framework that gets used. It's the same Angular, not the same Angular code, but rather it's an Angular code base, Angular TypeScript and CSS that gets used for the UI rendering and the business logic. And for the scripts, we typically use a different script for Android and iOS. I'll also try to see if I can explain the build if the time permits, or else Swayanjit is the guy who will probably mostly cover this. For the web app, we have again a portal and a desktop. So if you look at the portal code base, you will have two sections. One is what is called as app, another one what is called as desktop. So the app part will cover the portal code and the desktop will cover only some extensions. Again, there is a lot of code reuse between these two. This is 100% code reuse with some build scripts being customized for the platform.
So this desktop code, where do you have it now?
It's in the Sunbird-ED portal itself.
Portal only.
Yeah. So the build process of all of these 4 products, consumption products, exist. It's just a way to build a product, that's all. But the code base will remain the same. There is no change in the code base. Okay, perfect. So let's move ahead. Okay, so the generalization, externalization always gives us a bit of an overhead as well as a system, right? When you have some things which are for our advantage, there are also some of the things which would come in. So one of the fundamental challenges that we started to see is that we had externalized a lot of libraries. Okay, so this is the list of libraries which are meant for its own purpose. So I will just talk about some of the very basic and which are mostly used. So if you want to know what are the most important libraries, this number over here should give you an idea. If you find anything above 50, that means a lot of people are using it. It's of prime importance. And a lot of developers have cloned over it. So this is actually the count of how many clones have been created in GitHub. So how many developers are interacting on it on a day-to-day basis. So, I'll just move on because there are other places where I'm going to just run you through some of these things and how these are actually categorized. Let's move on. So there is a specific category of libraries which have been externalized and they are called as a separate set, the players and editors. These are also Angular libraries only. However, as Vinu was suggesting, it's part of knowledge. The initial development was done as part of a Sunbird-ED, but the enhancements and couple of other things, later it got shifted to knowledge. So they actually maintain these repos on a day-to-day basis. Okay. Consequentially, on the ground, everything has to be maintained by the front-end team. Okay. The knowledge and all other things are inconsequential. These are all the responsibility of the front-end team. Okay, let's move ahead. So these are the plugins. So this comes in a very separate category. For your Cordova application to work, we generally use plugins that needs to work across Android and iOS platforms. So it's a generic bridge. From your JavaScript, if you want to talk to the native layer, so the plugins are the way to do it. So there are a lot of Cordova plugins which are already built in. However, there are some specific plugins which have been custom built from the scratch. So one example that I would like to give, the telemetry data processing that was spoken about, we need to make sure once the telemetry messages are collected to some threshold, 200 messages, it has to be zipped. There is a message digest that gets generated. It has to get synced to the backend. This happens from the mobile app very aggressively. You see a 200 threshold count being hit, this entire logic kicks in. Things like that, where your normal Cordova plugins doesn't help you, those are the places where we have gone ahead and we have done some extensions. So these plugins are of prime importance for the team who actually deals with the mobile app. So let's move ahead. So what is the agenda one for the session today? So this is where all the functional configuration, how the bigger picture is going to come by. How do we configure the Sunbird-ED setup? This is the primary, business problem that most of the teams would hit. All the things that Vinu had spoken about. So those jargons are all going to come in now. Okay. So if you remember this slide from my previous slideshow, what we had said is create an organization, onboard the users to your organization, identify the taxonomy framework which is relevant for your need. In the case of Diksha, it could be BMGS. That could be the taxonomy you're looking at. Create the content and start distributing the content. This is the general theme. Okay. Now we will unravel what are the specific steps that we are going to do. It all starts here. Okay. You will create, the step one is you're going to create an organization. This is where your entire journey of the setup would get started. There is a org creation APIs which are enabled in the system. You need to have an access, a role access of org admin. There is a post installation script that's available as part of a Sunbird DevOps, which will do all of these steps step by step. Only thing is, a lot of people actually may not have the patience to go and look at all of these things, so I have just simplified this entire journey. So the step one is go and create an organization. One logical question before we move to the next step, what does an organization would have? Can someone say, what does an organization would have?
It will have a name.
It will have a name, and probably when do we call it as an organization? When we have employees or when we have users into it, correct? So Sunbird also thinks in a very similar way. So next. So it has what is called as a user management. The second one is what was called as channel. Any organization that gets created comes by default with a channel. Okay, and the org ID and the channel ID would remain the same. Don't worry about what these IDs would constitute, how would they get used. Just imagine there is an organization and you have two parts to it. Organization would enable the users to get managed and it also has a channel to be available. Let's go next. As part of user management, you can create users, n number of users. However, all these users by default do not have a privileged access. since this is a system where the content gets managed, right, you need to have a elevated access. When we talk about elevated access, someone could be called as content creator, someone could be called as a content reviewer, and someone could be called as a normal user. And you have couple of other access controls as well. Okay, so create users is one of the primary responsibility, and then we have to assign the roles to these users. So you have a separate API where you are going to do this. Okay, let's go ahead. Now coming back to the channel part. So as we had said in our initial slide, identification of a right taxonomy for the business is very critical. So any channel by design is allowed to own more than one framework by choice. You can have n number of frameworks being associated with it. Okay. Before I move forward, I want a video on taxonomy to be played. What is a taxonomy? Because it looks very jargonish, right? For someone who is not coming up from a learning space, for them they would look at it. Hey, idalappa, video MP4. Or learning framework. So you can just disable the sound and you guys can watch the video. What is a taxonomy? How is it applicable? How does it get used for a different context? Okay, it's a generic information. So frameworks. What does the framework? What is its choice? So it's the same set of questions that will be asked. Why do you need a framework? What is the purpose of a framework? How can we leverage it? And where you can implement it, right? 2x madappa. Okay, no problem. So framework will allow you to organize your digital assets. Okay, if you want to create a textbook and say this is relevant for some section of the people, the taxonomy will help you to do that. Discover the relevant assets. So you can make sure that the discovery, the user when he identifies as part of some taxonomy, the relevant discovery can be made from the user perspective. Third one, so it also allows you to create a digital, user-friendly digital platform. So that is one of the core fundamentals. And on top of it, every use case, every domain would come with its own demands for the framework. The K-12 might have called us CBSE board, medium and grade. Probably for others, it could be something else. You cannot go and reinvent this entire product for someone else. Rather, you just modify the taxonomy. So framework will allow us to define our own taxonomy. Okay, let's move ahead. So how can you use a framework? So I'll take a very different use case on what Diksha has not done right now. So how do we imagine a professional training framework? If we are all part of a company, right? How do we train our employees? So in the framework, there is what is called as a categories, and you also have what is called as a attributes. Okay. So we will also get to see what are some of the examples of. It's not being played, huh? Okay. So organization, role, vertical and proficiency, board, medium, grade and subject. So for a professional environment, this could be the relevant taxonomy. Does it mean this needs to be there? The answer is no. It can be something else as well. It's up to the person who wants to leverage it. So if the same thing had to get leveraged for a healthcare, hold on, just pause it. If the same thing has to get leveraged for healthcare, you will see a healthcare organization, department, role. So you can start creating content for Apollo Hospital, probably for ophthalmology department for a surgeon. So whatever was relevant for the CBSE English class 12 now started becoming relevant for a hospital name, a department and a specific role. So this is how the taxonomies can be leveraged across multiple systems. Oh. Okay, let's move ahead. So one fundamental thinking that I want to bring in here is the flexibility that has been built in. So how does it work at the end of the day, right? You're creating a content which is available across everywhere. If you don't have a discipline in terms of, play madappa, pause mode. If you don't have the discipline of tagging the content effectively, you will end up showing all the content to all the users. If I am the user who belong to a specific organization, okay, I will start applying filters for my own needs, correct? I belong to org 1 and I am a TL, let's assume. So the content would get filtered and I'm going to show relevant content. That is a fundamental thinking in the Sunbird-ED with respect to knowledge. How do users relevantly discover the content? Does it mean, can you pause? Does it mean, is it applicable to only one specific frame of mindset? The answer is no. It's applicable across. It's a domain agnostic. It's a question of the person who is adopting it. You know, he can reimagine these things. It's the same content creation story. It's just your taxonomy that gets differed. BMGS, it's called ADCS, agriculture department, crop type, soil type. This can also be your relevant taxonomy. You can start to solve the same problem. Then as a medical profession, you can start to say specialty, course type, delivery method and all those things, right? So it's the same story of content being shown, but with a different set of taxonomy. The same Sunbird-ED can be reused for a different purpose with a very minimal engineering rework. Okay, let's move ahead.
Impressive.
So one thing that always gets into this, the claim has been made, the taxonomy is being thought through, but is it really working today? That is one of the fundamental questions that everyone would ask. Hey, Rappa, go to the UPSMF. So now I'll show you the replica of the Sunbird-ED. Okay. So if you look at, this is Mission Niramaya. How many of you can recognize that this is the same Diksha? Answer is no. So if I go to the change preference.
Once we tell, they can.
Yeah, once I say, yeah, you can. So if you look at the taxonomy is what we were referring to, correct? Look at the taxonomy. The taxonomy says function, role, activity and competency. The framework name is called as FRAC. The same product with a different set of taxonomy. This is a live working system.
Like this? Is it like
No, you can extend it to any levels.
you can customize it?
See, one problem is if you maintain such hierarchy of levels, right, your tagging will become a nightmare.
True, very true.
So you need to have fundamentally 2 or 3 itself is unmanageable. We have gone to an extent of 4. With 4, we have been able to manage at least content in almost thousands. And we have not seen any users being segmented in a very different way. So if you look at this particular site, right, it's the same Sunbird-ED UI. Nothing is changed. It's just a configuration and some UI completely refurbished, used for a completely different societal purpose. Your taxonomy is what we are showing. This taxonomy is called as FRAC. So the function, role, activity and competency. So in the further sessions, I will also show you how do we actually create the taxonomy. There is a taxonomy editor which we are recently kind of contributing as a community perspective, where we'll show you how to actually create a live taxonomy in a session. Okay. So let's move on. Now we'll go back to our, you may have to unfortunately hit a couple of things. Yeah. The fireworks may have to come in again. Yeah, hold on. So the step 2 where we had stopped. So organization needs to get created. You're going to have a user management. You will start creating users, assigning roles, a recap. Now you have a channel where a taxonomy frameworks can get identified. I have a question. Can the taxonomy frameworks belong to separate domains?
Why not?
Absolutely, it can belong. It's just an imagination of the business use case, right? So Sunbird will help you to make sure that the diverse taxonomy frameworks can be associated. Okay, let's move ahead. In terms of content, there are some specific things that we have to make sure that the content is ready from a system perspective. One is the object category creation. I don't know who had this question on primary category and some things were being asked, right? So object category will allow users or the business to identify its purpose. If you are creating a video is a video, correct? But you can call it as a web series episode as well. You can call it as a students, learning resource as well, there is a business context to it that users will be able to identify. That dictionary is created in object category. If I am going to call it as a video, no user will be able to understand. Even YouTube provides us a video, correct? There is nothing different that we are doing as a system. Your object category will define its business purpose. Textbook, calling something as a learning resource, learning material. At least I'll say some things which are relevant for Diksha. If I am calling it as a web series episode, then I'm able to connect immediately. So Sunbird will help us conveniently to identify its purpose. So object category is that. Okay. Licensing is one of the prerequisites. Since it's an open source platform, right? Any content that gets published need to have a default licensing. So it should not be bounded by any rules that it has a intellectual property rights and everything. So it allows users to have the default licensing. So that's the reason this needs to be created. Okay. Perfect. Let's move ahead. So once I have this entire organization ready, now I have a Diksha kind of a system being set up, correct? What if I want more tenants to be created for Tamil Nadu board, for Odisha board or Madhya Pradesh, CBSE, all of these guys? Just replicate this effort. That's all. Whatever I spoke about, except for the pink line, rest of the things, you just have to do it. You can create n number of organizations, which means you will have n number of users into their own respective organizations. You will have their own taxonomies being served. Correct? So which means you are going to solve the users in a federated way. There is no centralized mechanism right now. However, it is not multi-tenant. I have to warn you that, okay? This is not multi-tenant by choice. So this is not a multi-tenant system. Don't fall into the trap of making it multi-tenant. It's just a way on how do you organize the users, how do you make sure different taxonomies are being done, and how do you tag it relevantly. Okay, let's move ahead. And some of the system defaults, that's okay. So there are some of the system defaults which I will showcase in this particular slide as well. Let's move ahead. So these are the steps. So I'll just repeat whatever I had done it in a graphical way. Now I'll starting to do it in a very theoretical way. Create an organization. It has a user management, which means you're going to create a users, you're going to give a role access. Correct? This was the first part. Second part, creation of a master categories, which means a taxonomy, and then start creating default licenses, set up taxonomy, and then make sure system settings are being done at default. And start identifying what is your default organization. Okay, these are the steps that we need to do. This is where the relevance of other building blocks would come into the picture. Okay, I'll give you some of the examples. When we say we create an organization, this is an API that is being provided by Sunbird Learn. It's an organization API. You have org create, you have org edit, you have a CRUD which is available. Along with that, you need to have a elevated access rights. Any normal user cannot go and create an organization, correct? It's a fair statement. So anyone with the org admin role access can go ahead and create an organization. Who will onboard the users? The same org admin will onboard the basic set of users. So he can go ahead and create n number of users and again assign a roles that's called as content creator, reviewer, and some of the other roles that exist in the system. So this being supported as part of a user API. So you have a user API create, you have a bulk user upload, you also have a user read, everything available as part of a user APIs which is being provided by Sunbird Learn. Next, no, I think I said it in a very different way. Okay. Open source contribution which was done from as a community members will showcase to you and probably let's see if we can make a sense out of it. Okay, let's go ahead. Can you take taxonomy editor please? So if you look at this is a localhost 4200, correct?
Yeah.
So this is a local instance of this taxonomy editor. I think 4200 is where a lot of Angular developers would start to jump in from their seats. So if you look at this, it has a category called as a board, medium, grade and subject. Very similar to what we have been doing. Can you click on the CBSE? So if you look at it, you will start to see the relevant relationship with this. So you also have a relevant grades which are applicable to this. So this is actually a live Diksha data. So these are all public APIs. We have just taken those APIs and we are reading it.
But I'm referring to the playground.
You are referring to the playground? Oh, okay, perfect, perfect. So along with this, in this taxonomy editor, you can also start adding more boards. You can start creating more associations. So this is actually meant to construct your taxonomy. This was one of the fundamental, place of friction that we were seeing with lot of people who were trying to adopt Sunbird. For Diksha, it may not be the case because you already have a leveraged taxonomy. But come to iGot, they have a taxonomy being modified every week. So that's where this was actually being implemented. So you can create your new subject. You can create your terms into this. This is called as a term. Illa existing new code. This is actually a playground. Yeah. Yeah. So this is just a playground for someone to experience what is taxonomy. So the similar that same editor has been used for multiple purposes.
So how this is different creating schema?
Creating?
Schema.
Which schema are you referring to?
No SQL schema, just you are adding one key with the laser with some similar thing.
So when you are talking about a schema, then you are referring to the database entities being extended. Here you are not extending a data model. You are actually extending a taxonomy which is used for your discovery. If let's say I want to add a new board tomorrow, that's called as let's assume one of our fellow countries have been added to the same framework, Bangladesh for example. I can add that board and I can make sure what are the mediums which are relevant for that board. Similarly the grades and also the subjects which are being taught in that board.
So it's basically a tool which is managing taxonomy.
Managing taxonomy. Today if you have to create this taxonomy, you have to hit a lot of APIs. So this complete thing is automated. If someone has worked in the implementation effort of Diksha, probably they would have experienced it. And probably being in a front end, you will get
You saw just before that there was some other site, there was some 3-4 field.
correct.
Right. So if we need more drills, so how this will happen?
So basically for that, there was one more. Can you just remove the dashboard? So this is where you can actually create even the categories. So you can start creating the categories and the next step you can start creating the terms. If it is a BMGS, you go and create a BMGS. If it is the other framework that we spoke about, you just go and create it. So with UI being in place, right, a lot of these things will start to be very fast. In a Postman collection, people tend to go in circles.
And how to create a relation?
Sorry? See, right now, so relation will get created automatically. So once you make sure that these categories are created in the same order, so the taxonomy will get rendered in the same order, and you can just start creating new terms logically there.
So if I'm adding a grade here, okay, it's automatically considered for CBSE board.
Because I have selected
Yes,
this,
whatever the selection to that depth level,
it will start adding the terms.
So I think like it's like not adding a column in a table, just adding a tuple. I mean not.
So see, in terms of DB construct, it's not really a SQL. Okay.
No, not in terms of SQL. I'm just telling you in a layman terms.
In a layman terms, yeah, you can say that you are expanding your dictionary. That's all. Okay, perfect. Let's move on.
Actually creating parent-child relationships.
Correct. It is a bidirectional. That's the difference with the taxonomy. Generally, tree is one way, right? But in this case, that's not the way. It's actually other way around as well. So even class 7 will know who are its parents. So that it knows what is its root. So this will create a lot of APIs to get invoked, and this will try to solve that. But right now, this is not in production as on today with any of the systems. This is being used as a in a pilot purpose for some of the community needs.
So it can also if any use case wants to remove one category from the mid.
Yeah.
Can also
Yes, you can remove it also.
You can define it when the categories are defined.
See, if you start abstracting the entire medium itself, then you are dealing with a very different problem. But if you are saying I am going to remove the terms, then it's a different problem.
Entire medium actually.
If you remove entire medium, then you have to reconnect everything.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Parent-child relationship will change.
yeah. Okay, let's move ahead.
But the only thing is for Diksha this has already been done, so you don't have to.
You don't get to see this use case.
For other adopters, this is used a lot. And they say,
I
okay,
think
want
if-
to create a taxonomy of my own, which is not BMGS. They have to think a lot to understand what is taxonomy all about.
Even if you have to make a small extension, right, to the existing BMGS, you'll get to see a lot of challenges. So I think that will help you to solve the problem. Okay, let's move ahead. Okay, so now I want to cover, so the first part was how do we set up a Sunbird? We spoke about what are the steps. Does it mean the Sunbird-ED portal or the products are ready for the use? The answer is partially yes, it's not completely ready. Before I move on to the next set of steps, this particular thing is very important. We call it as a extensibility framework, okay? I will ask this question to a lot of developer community here. If let's assume I don't want to hard code anything in my code, saying after this particular UI element, I don't want this UI element to come in. What we would do? We would write element 1 and then followed by element 2, correct? That is how the things would go in Angular world. Let's assume I want this to be driven by a configuration. I don't want to hard code. I don't want to take an opinion. So the tabs that we saw on Diksha's home, digital textbooks, courses, all of these things, right? So what if I want that tabs to be, not hard coded, but rather it's configuration driven? You need a JSON, correct? And you also need a place where you can conveniently place that JSON. So extensibility framework will allow you to create that JSON dumps which can manage the configuration of your UI. Okay. So I'll give you one example. So the fundamental breakdown structure is, it's called as component, type, subtype, action, and the JSON, the resultant JSON. This entire data is stored in Cassandra. So you can look at primary key, partition key, everything coming in. So let's move ahead. So if you look at this, component is portal here. The type is user. So there is a subtype which talks about its purpose, which is a exclusion, and action is onboarding. So it talks about portal user exclusion for onboarding. And then it has some JSON dump available to it. So you at least there are around how many numbers? Probably 40, 50? 65 such configurations which will drive this entire thing. However, you don't need to enable all 65. Some of them are available by default, or some of them can be restored as is. Okay?
If we have to change it, we need to change it directly in the database.
Yes, you don't need to make a you don't need to deploy your pod, basically. So you are controlling your UI behavior. So your question of how can I go and customize the home screen? There is one more JSON which is being put in extensibility framework on how home should behave. So go and change in that JSON, you will start seeing the changes in.
Sir, there is an announcement. Yeah, go ahead.
So there is a small announcement. Today we are going to have a fire drill in our hotel for the staff. So you don't need to have panic. There will be ringing the alarm and the lights of the fire. When there's small practice for the hotel staffs. So just you can continue after 3 to 4 minutes. It will be ringing. Just a light. Don't need to nothing panic and all.
No. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What time? So
What time?
3:30 to 4 o'clock. It will be a sudden. Fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
हम लोग नहीं भागेंगे
हाँ, हम लोग नहीं मांगेंगे. So this part is pretty critical for the folks who work on the front end teams, because they generally need to know why is it so configurational driven, right? If you have to achieve the outcome like UPSMF, the outcome like parallel products being available, then you have to make it config driven. There is no other choice. You hard code it, the UI will remain the same, and people will start complaining, this looks like Diksha, this looks like Sunbird, right? If you have to break all those stereotypes, you have to make your UI configurable driven. Make sense? Okay, perfect. Let's move ahead. Yeah, that will do it after this next step. Yeah.
Just one thing before you go to the next topic. Can you go back to the extensible framework?
Yeah.
This extensible framework, what Sharath has explained, the form configurations especially. But form configurations is not only the extensible framework. This is one of the plugins.
Plugin, yeah.
The Cordova plugins you can see. Similarly, form service is one of the plugin for extensible framework. Okay, this extensible framework allows to build the new APIs dynamically.
Yeah.
Okay, today the form service is one API which is used in many places. If you want some other new service for your different use cases, you write a plugin that will create a database and everything itself. You don't have to write any code to like make up and
Yeah.
running one more service with a new data structure and everything. It's a plugin for this extensible framework that will expose the new APIs, and that data, whatever the API you call, it will show into a different table altogether.
Yeah.
Similar to Cordova plugins, you have to consider it like that. Okay?
Perfect.
So that's the one corrections. Okay. Yeah.
Move ahead. Let's move ahead. Yep. So, as I said, UI is completely driven by configurations. Tabs on. Yeah.
You talk about that we have 65, around 65.
Yeah.
So do we have any list of it?
I think there is a Versal and also the listing which is available explicitly.
Already available. We
There's a
can
list
call
all,
it
fetch all API for this particular thing. You
So
can
that is
fetch
also APIs
all
basically.
all the forms that are created for your environment. Okay.
And what is the endpoint?
It is form slash data slash form slash
Form slash.
list of, I think.
Form slash-
I think it is there in the
It's
documentation.
just a form slash read, form slash read,
So,
form slash list.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a read, CRUD basically. You have a create, read, and list all. Yeah. Okay. So everything that you see on the UI, whether it is the tabs, whether it is languages, what are the profiles which are relevant, you want to control anything, form APIs are the ones where you will get to see a lot of these things being controlled. Okay. Let's move ahead. So now we'll go on to the main mudda, what is called a Sunbird-ED portal. I'm pretty sure now we are going to do a little bit of a code walkthrough, and we'll also show you some of the source code where things are pretty important for the developers to you begin their things, get things moving. So that is very important. So that is the code. That is the thing that we are going to talk about. So we are going to talk about a JSON file, which is very critical for you to get it up started. We will also talk about the setup steps and build script. For the build script, I will cover it for mobile as well. Okay. If you guys think there are more mobile folks who are going to join in, then I will skip it because Swanjit can cover it. So you guys are there for the mobile as well. So I will try to cover for the mobile as well. Okay. So next is a package structure on the Sunbird-ED portal, and then we're going to do a little bit of a code walkthrough. Okay. Are we clear? Do you guys have any other expectations on this? I have made it very plain because this is what we're going to do for this particular thing. Okay. Let's move ahead into the code. So first let's go into the JSON. Why is it looking so colory? Hey, go to portal, pa. Hey, put it in light mode, no? It's okay, it's okay. Go to the code. No?
It's a network issue.
There's a network issue? Okay, okay. If in case you have it in the VS Code, I think that's the best way. A lot of people will correlate. So the steps are pretty simple. I will first explain what is the package structure and how things are organized. The first one is what is called as a source. Let's get into the source. So this is what I was referring to. So there are two packages. One is what is called as an app. The other one is what is called as a desktop. The exe installer project is specifically into this. You're going to have a corresponding build scripts as well available. The next part is an app. Let's get into the app. In the app, you have two apps. If you remember, the front end, which is purely an Angular application, the back end for front end, the Node.js. So the app has basically all the back end code. However, the client, there is a one specific folder that's called as a client, which hosts the complete Angular application. Okay, just open the client. So if you look at it, this is all Angular packages, correct? So this is what we have actually. So the client is basically an Angular project. So you can see Angular JSON, couple of package.json references. Can you open the package.json references? Yes. Okay. So can you scroll down? So you will see a lot of dependencies being there, and these were all that I was talking about. The generalized, externalized libraries. How are we going to leverage it? These are the places where it is leveraged.
So just to add on, whatever the annotations with the @project
Sunbird
stands for the community-owned NPM packages.
Yes.
So, for example, this is not with the community; it's another open source project which we are embedding into our projects. @project Sunbird is one which is legacy maintained by the community.
Yep. So what is its purpose? What do each library would stand by? I think that is what he's going to cover as part of the tomorrow's agenda. Okay. Let's go back to the package structure. So just to summarize, what we have just seen through in the code is there is a main project for Sunbird portal, and we have two main folders. One is for the app, which will host the web app. The other one is for the desktop app, which is a exe installer. Inside a web app, you have two projects again. The app would consist of all the files that is there. Can you go up, scroll up? Sorry, that's not visible. Yeah, this particular folder will have all the files that is supposed to be done for the Node.js. The backend for frontend. Client is the only specific folder which is going to host your client app, basically the Angular app. So if you want this complete portal to be up and running, you have to run the app first, followed by the client. Now let us get on to the Sunbird portal README. So what are the setup steps? How do we set it up? README a little bit up. Go to the GitHub repo. Internet is not working. Huh? Oh, for the fire drill, did they switch off the internet? No, it could be a possibility. No?
That could be possible.
That you.
Yeah, I'll give you the.
Okay, so the plugin session which you will cover it tomorrow.
For the mobile?
No, here only. Not plugin projects and but things.
So I'll be covering it for everything on the Sunbird-ED side.
Sunbird side.
Yeah.
Sunbird side, correct.
So the some things I'll cover today. Rest of the things he'll cover tomorrow.
Today's session is especially portal UI. Okay, you will be covering.
Yeah, I'll be covering most.
Portal UI also there are certain plugins which actually I do have questions, so that's why.
Correct.
The outer plugins that you mean, like the common consumptions, or there are multiple plugins which are available.
Collection editor.
Yeah,
It's an editor, yeah. He will cover it tomorrow.
he'll cover it
Those
actually.
are entry packages. Okay, yeah. Or front-end libraries that we are using.
Yeah.
That's tomorrow. Tomorrow morning that
Hey,
front-end libraries will be.
load ಆಗ್ತಲ್ವಾ? You want my hotspot?
Now it is.
ಇದಿಲ್ಲಪ್ಪ GitHub. I want a GitHub.
GitHub.
Go to GitHub. I want a README. Come down. So 5.0 or 5.1, anything is okay.
Sharath, any plan for tenant creation? He's asking.
Tenant creation.
There are some questions on tenant creation.
Okay, on the tenant creation. Probably I'll just take your question and see if I can help you out with those questions as well. If in case.
उसको क्रिएट करके बता भी सकते हैं ना
बता भी सकते हैं अगर
एनवायरनमेंट चाहिए आपको
हाँ एनवायरनमेंट चाहिए होगा थोड़ा.
तो इसमें टेनेंट क्रिएट में
Especially all these tenants and all, tenants and all will be covered as part of LAN. Okay, pretty much.
Yeah.
What is the organization, tenants, channel, and everything. As part of the LAN, they will walk through the code also, how it's been, the code level as well as what are the APIs.
So that for that you don't have a UI utility. All those things that I spoke about, you have to invoke the APIs in the same order that I mentioned.
I think that is planned for tomorrow in the backend sessions.
Hey, yellapa, read me.
we can create it and see, right?
Yeah, you can actually invoke. See, some of the things like or create and all, you need a elevated access. You have a collection. We have a collection which we can show, but
We
that
show
would
collection,
require.
okay, the order of the APIs to be exposed, like for Sunbird-ED to work.
That will be covered here in the front end or in the back end because again,
Okay. See, front end, we are pretty much going to code level walkthrough. Okay, again, he is walking through about configuration also today. Then he will show that in a collection also, what are the things within the collection, what are the things will happen step by step in the collection also, he will explain that. Okay. Like even the channel creation.
So any questions that you would have? I think you would have missed that slides that I spoke about, correct?
Yeah, I just came in.
Because he
Okay.
was in a backend session, so I called him. That there
Okay.
is a discussion going on, so that's why.
Okay. So then one suggestion that I have, you will always get the recordings. Okay. Come back with that question. There is always a last day ask anything kind of a session.
Tomorrow he said that tomorrow backend session is
Learn will do that actually. Learn also will cover this.
Yeah.
You can ask the same question there. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So it talks about prerequisites. What are the things that you are supposed to have as a developer, and what are the dependencies? So these are the skill sets that you need to have. You need to have a node installed. You need to have an Angular CLI above 11 at 5.2, 5.1. So right now I think we are at Angular 14, 15, 14. So and you need to have a yarn, which is for the npm alternative. You can also do a npm, but yarn is more reliable. And we have a nodeman which needs to be used. So these are the steps. You need to clone the project, and you just need to follow these instructions. Just go to the client, run a yarn install. As I said, now go to the app folder, run a yarn install. 2 steps. So first step, you're building a client application. Second step, you're getting a dependencies for your Node.js application. And then you have to configure some environment variables which have been provided here. Come down. Okay. So this is where the application configuration would come in. If you remember my agenda that I spoke about, the app JSON, this is a place that we are talking about. Can we scroll down? I'll come to that particular file. I'll do a separate walkthrough for that. Come down. Okay. Now how do we run the application? So we have built everything. How do we run the application? Just go to the client, Angular application, do a build, and allow it to run. Come to the app folder, basically, which is a Node.js application. Do a npm run server. You have your portal backend also up and running. Yep.
I do have a question in this running application.
Yeah.
I'm really not sure if this is the right time to ask.
No problem. There is no right or wrong time. Please go ahead. You can ask.
Okay, so the thing is like this ng build watch.
Yeah.
Okay, when it creates a disk, this npm run server uses that disk to render the
Correct.
front end.
Correct.
Right. The problem is like I'm facing this issue. Maybe you have a solution. Thing is that this 3000 is the front end.
Yes.
3000/API is the API.
Correct.
Now when I change anything in Angular, I was just experimenting with things.
Perfect.
And I save the file.
Ah.
It doesn't rebuild.
It is
So-
giving you a moment problem, moment JS issue.
That it's giving again, and I have to rebuild it again.
Yes.
And it takes approximately 10 to 12 minutes for each build, which is like hindering the development time.
So in 6.0 it has been fixed, but the thing is you can change your moment JS version.
Yeah.
From currently in 5.1 it is 2.29.1 I think. Change it to 2.24.0 and
Yeah.
your issue will be
See,
solved.
any such queries, right? Especially where you think that your development time things are these are the developer problems, not really that would affect the overall outcome. But rather, what I would suggest is, why don't you use a Sunbird-ED community? You just post a question, you will have a lot of people who can answer you this. Okay. And also second thing is Moment.js. See, we are not doing any locale based information. Okay. So one of the things that I had also asked the team when we were actually driving these projects was, to actually retire some of these libraries. If we are not handling a locale which is across different geographies, Moment.js doesn't even have a business to be here. Okay. It's been just put in as some dependency at some point of time. So you can even retire the dependency and still allow the portal to run. It will still work. So if Moment.js is a problem, you can just remove that dependency and try running it. So that you get unblocked. But yeah, logically what he said, you can downgrade the dependency, and for those things, if you are having any such developer issues, always come back to the community. They'll help you out.
So that is related, like when we try to run the local, so these problems arise. But still the do the file change and
Yeah, these are all the individual developer challenges, right? What you are referring to. Agreed, agreed. And same happens with the node incompatibility also. I have seen a lot of developers who are on node 16, node 17 and all, and they try to do a npm run, and libraries will start becoming incompatible. So it's better to follow the documentation. If node 14 is recommended, try to stick to node 14.
I used Node 14 and I was getting some server errors. Which is that?
Could be there. I agree. I mean, there could be a issue. Can you post? No, this does not seem to be telling me anything. It just says it's failed.
This is what I got actually.
Huh?
This is what I got when I tried to run server.
There will be a stack trace. Basically, what it is saying is the end result on where it failed. Correct? It needs to really talk about the stack trace on what specific point it failed. So it could be your zip node modules,
Maybe.
or it could be your incompatibility in the libraries. What is the node version you are running on?
14.2.
14.2?
Yeah.
Okay.
14.2.
So what you are suggesting is your initial recommended version was not working. That is what you are trying to mention.
No, I was working on 14.2 only,
Ah.
and then I tried to build it again, and
Did you add a new node by any chance?
So it's
One question is,
looks like it was tried on a Windows machine, right?
no, it's tried here only.
no. Is it an M1
Screenshot shows
chipset? Is it an M1 chipset?
It's M1 chipset.
Ah,
M2
okay.
actually.
Yeah. So the thing is, with silicon chipset, they have changed. Okay, this is not related to Sunbird.
Sunbird at all, yeah.
Okay, I'll give you what is the problem with M2 chipset, silicon chipsets that they call it as for Mac. The node is dependent on Python. Okay. Now the thing is, the node GYP.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the zip modules that I was referring to.
Chip
Yeah.
modules are not available because with M2 chipsets or M1 chipsets, Python is installed with Python 3. But Python 2 is the one which is required.
Okay, so do we need to
You
install Python 2
just
only?
Google it out. You get lot of. Okay, I have a M1 chipset. That's why I'm asking you. I'm telling you these
I have
things.
Python 3 in my system.
Yes.
Yeah, that is the root cause actually. So
There are
as I said,
developer
right?
problems, so each mission having different
See,
configurations and that you will end up with this kind of problem.
Every developer will come with their own configurations. Okay. So the best way that we recommend is that always
Actually,
put it
you
across.
add this in README because that will be.
It is not at all.
See, it's not a Sunbird problem as such. If you look at it, you go ahead and install any node related project, you will obviously end up with this issue.
Obviously end up, and you have to do Google it, and there is something called as Stack Overflow. You get lot of answers.
So
Even I got around 50 answers, nothing worked. After that 51, it started working.
I can-
Happened with me actually when I tried different solutions from Stack Overflow, na,
I
I get
agree.
ruined so many things.
Yeah.
Agree.
Which are actually working in my system.
Agree.
So yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
So one more
Same
thing.
happens with all the developers.
All the
It has to
developers,
be.
yeah, correct.
One more thing where I was able to correlate when you were saying that was that there was a upgrade in one of the npm packages. Okay. You may not even have changed your code. One of your dependent library guys would have gone ahead and would have done the upgrade. All we have done is not to fix the version, rather use a tilde symbol.
Build or a cap symbol.
Very simple. That itself can break your system like nothing is working. The best way always to look at is the logs, second is a community, and third, a bit of a Googling as well from the developer front. So there is no medicine for those things, but yes, having said that, there has been a lot of frequently asked questions in the community. Definitely you can go back and refer to some of them. Someone would in the community would have definitely got this done, because there are 3 projects which are running on this. So someone would have definitely hit this problem. So that's the mindset you probably can come into the community.
Sometimes it's working with node 16 only.
16 version it works.
Exactly. So as I said, some of the branches.
40, what we found that it doesn't mean that nobody can go to 450 and 16, right? Because if you are already working on some project with 16, you have to go with 16 for this project also. If you able to compile, well and good. If not able to compile, go and fix it. What are the compilation proceed? There is
See,
nothing stopping
generally the open source community, the way how it works is, at least with so much of dependencies coming in, right, it's very difficult to manage the dependency management. Some of them may not even be associated with us directly. So the best way to do it is to make sure you identify the issue and come and talk to the larger forums. Even if you look at open source, I mean Linux Foundation and all of these guys, they would also do it in a similar way. There are other projects who are actually come in day out. If they face a issue, come in. It's an individual developer that's impacted. If there is a system that gets impacted, then you can expect a larger participation and people will chip in very pretty fast. If it is an individual developer productivity, then probably you can ask for the community. I think that is how the general open source contributions work. Okay, perfect. Let's move ahead. Okay, so this is the project structure. I think I'll just skip this for now. So for the testing, we do a unit testing, and our coverage stands at somewhere around 70, 82, and I believe a lot of right assertions have been put in place, and there is also a clear quality gate that has been set in. Anything going below that quality gate, your builds will start to get kind of degraded. So that's how it has been set it up. So as I said, there are a lot of independent libraries, and you will also get to see on what is the version of Angular it is being supported and built in. One specific note I want to talk about for the front-end developers is that if your dependent libraries are on a futuristic version, you are going to have a compatibility problem. The backward compatible versions work, but not the future compatible versions. I'll give you an example. Right now, Portal is working on Angular 14. If anyone writes a library on Angular 15, there is a very high chance that it doesn't work. Okay, you guys have to be very careful. And whenever you guys are doing an Angular migration on these projects, you have to first do it for the dependent libraries first, independently publish it, and then do it for the root project. If you do it in the other way around, you will not even be able to compile, most likely. So do this for this first. You will not even affect the quality of the project. Make sure you take care of these things first, and then move to the root project. So the same holds good even for the mobile as well.
How can we make our project futuristic? I mean, if in some years, like right now we are working in Code 1, right?
Correct.
We are having capacitor right now.
Correct.
Right. So how we can move from Code 1 to capacitor?
So one strategy. So if you look at the updatability of the systems, right now we are at Angular 15. So which is at the latest version. So we, at least the day I remember, 14. So we had started from 5 or 4 when I remember, and we have been able to upgrade almost 10 versions for all these years. Okay. So whenever the system doesn't go through an upgrade, this is a general philosophy as an architect that I would find, is that there is somewhere a lot of
you hit a roadblock at some times.
Yeah, for sure.
No option for you until to upgrade to the latest version.
So capacitor to, so Ionic to capacitor migration, there is a strategy. Lot of plugins, default plugins which are available in Ionic Cordova is by default available in capacitor as well. However, customized plugins is where the effort has to go in. Right now, if I understand correctly, there has been an effort on the existing Sunbird-ED team where they are actually doing this capacitor migration.
We started doing that 6.0.
Yeah, but that they are doing it as part of a community effort and everything.
But that can, happen in your end. Right now we are working in Diksha project. So we have like this common form element, NPM version 5 is compatible with it.
Correct.
So we have worked on it for 2 years. We have worked on Diksha, right? So now new version is available.
Correct.
You change in your Sunbird, change it. But
Correct.
right now we can't take that thing. We are already working on this part.
So if you are going for an upgrade on your, let's assume your base project,
yeah, base project, right.
These libraries will continue to be maintained as part of a community initiative, correct?
Yeah.
So these libraries will be available across 1, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I'll just take you to the ng components. Go to ng components. This is one of the libraries, okay? I think your question is pretty relevant. How do we ensure? How is this managed? So V kodappa. V. So if you look at this, see, this is V11, V12, V13. It means the Angular version of that particular version is supported. So there will be a specific npm package. Get into this V13 and go to the package.json.
Also, we have something called
Versions.
Which will tell which branch is pointing to
which version of the Angular.
What is the npm version number?
So every software will have a start life and an end life, correct? Similarly, this will also have a start life and an end life. So right now, 5 Angular versions are parallelly supported. But come 1 year down the line, you might see one of them going out. There is no more upgrades or anything done. You may have to mandatorily upgrade.
So in that case, like we have built a project, we have our NPM modules are already there.
Correct.
Like for 5.1 version. After 2 years, you are upgrading it for 7 or maybe 6.
Correct.
So do we have to do it manually in a project at that time?
So it's not manually as such. If you are doing a Angular migration on your core project, then you need to just look out what are the other packages available which are compatible. How would you upgrade an Angular material? You will go to their library site, you will check out what is their latest, what is the compatibility, and then you will mention that version.
Yeah, that manually.
Manually, even here also it's manually.
Manually, no?
Yeah.
So that's very good.
Getting the package number is fine.
Package number, just the package number.
It's just a number change, that's all. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Version information present for all the project Sunbird modules?
All the libraries that I spoke about, yes, it does exist.
This has a table which will guide you to like what is the Angular version.
So at least the branch name would definitely help you to understand. V11, V12, V13, even the package names, the NPM packages that are published will come with whatever the corresponding versions on which it is supported. So that itself will suggest.
Actually, 1 or 2 packages I saw, but I didn't find any version names mapping with the branch.
Probably you need to check for the npm.js. Just provide the base package name and then followed by V11 and V12, you should be able to find. Which package are you referring to?
Common consumption in the
This is the common consumption. This is the one that I am showing you. So what we can do is, I'll take you to npmjs.com. Go to the npmjs.com. So there is a very easy way of finding this out as well. Do a search on the common consumption. Oh, sorry, I was a little bit fast. I didn't realize.
This is mobile internet, so
Okay.
we have to bear with that.
Yeah. No Wi-Fi, yeah? Oh, fire has not gone down then. Okay. So if you look at this project Sunbird, just copy paste it now.
Common consumption is the type ಮಾಡಿ. Combination consumption. UI.
So if you look at this, V13, V9, V14, V11, see, all the versions you have a compatible version.
Fire exit to stairway. Do not use elevators.
So we'll take a break for 3, 4
Do not
minutes
use
because there
elevators.
is going to be to see a lot of versions being available. You just need to check for the compatibility. npmjs.com. That's where, just like how Docker images are being pushed, npm packages gets pushed into the centralized repository. Just the way how you would look at a Maven repo and its dependencies, you will get to see what are its dependencies. Based on that, you can take a call. Okay. There can be a chance that the version that you are looking out for may not be available. Then welcome to the open source world. Create a clone out of it. Just publish one repo. All it takes is just change the versions, publish the repo under your credentials. You are an open source contributor and start using it.
As a Diksha team, you guys will be always using
Ed.
adoption. Okay, you guys should not do manual changes anywhere in the package
Exactly.
until if there is a developer specific issue, like with our cap and all somewhere.
Yeah.
Only those minor things you will do, but you should not commit those things. Okay, that's only for local to make it work.
Yeah.
Okay, you
Yeah,
having this version.
Never commit the developer version and all, okay? Because you will have all very.
compatible issues and all. No.
So people who are doing code reviews, make sure your package.json is never ever being fiddled with. Anything goes wrong in package.json, I think your entire front end app will start to suffer. Okay, perfect. So I think one thing I would just want to cover is on the appconfig.json. Let's just do that one walkthrough. I think then we are. So if you have to get started logically, can you come down? Environment helpers. Environment helpers, sorry. Yeah. So this is very important. The environment variables helper. So someone was, I think you were asking, can I connect to a different environment? This will help you to connect to a different environments. So there are around, can you come down? There are some specific things like server URL, auth server URL, auth server client, and can you come down?
Just to, Sharath, just to
Add on, yeah.
There is a word called SB_domain, right? If you go to the top, we have mentioned which domain it can be connected
to.
Okay, so you update your domain and you have to give your keys so that it connects to that particular environment.
Yeah.
So front end will be same, only back end I am connected.
We'll start to
The
switch.
API,
Yeah.
the API will go to that particular
different version. It
environment.
will change, right? Different environment.
Correct.
You can say it's a base URL.
It's a base URL, correct. But that itself does not suffice. There are a lot of other environment variables. If you have a Google CAPTCHA, that Google CAPTCHA key may not be same for 2 environments. So you may have to configure that variable. So these are all a regular day in day out developer activity, nothing really complex. It's just that the numbers are higher, you just have to get the smart work of what are the things. Okay, let's come down a little bit. There is anything very specific that I have to. So if you look at the keys and all, it will be specific to every environment. Whenever you change an environment, make sure you take care of the keys. Very important. And any URLs, you can provide a URLs. If in case it is not provided, it will get defaulted. So make sure your default URLs are also pointing to the right versions. Okay.
And one more thing is, please don't commit this code.
Don't commit, never ever commit package.json, environment variables, app_config.json, never ever commit. If you commit, all the traffic of Diksha will start to come to your staging. Okay, perfect.
To add one more, so whatever the right hand side, what we are saying, the env dot, right? So it is the values which is injected from the Sunbird DevOps folder during the build.
Yeah.
Okay. So that you in the local we won't see, because RHS side we will be directly knowing the value of that particular key. We will just write it. So this is a template file which defines like when the build the head goes for a build process, this key is taken from the private.
So the config maps, what we call it as, right, where we actually induce this configuration, that will have the lot of these values, and that is getting driven by a central repository that's called as Sunbird DevOps. So your entire build process gets centralized through this particular structure called as Sunbird DevOps. Even the agenda one that I covered on how to set up a Sunbird was actually taken from the same script. Okay. Okay, cool. Let's move ahead.
One thing is around DevOps play the key role.
Yeah, very important.
You guys cannot set by yourself for sure. As a front-end developer, you can't set all these things by your own.
By yourself, you may need a help of a DevOps.
Without DevOps, you can't run your portal. Okay, clear.
You need to have some insistence. So because if you want to have a Google reCAPTCHA key to be configured, if you want to have a Kong token URL, so those are the things which a typical front-end developer may not necessarily have. You may need to work very closely with your DevOps team, get those values and make sure it is up and running.
Especially the keys are not private keys. Okay.
But having,
will not share with you directly.
yeah,
When you say
some of the keys and all will not be shared with you. But at the end of the day, if you want to create a hack, go and just override these variables, it will start to work. That's a shortest way.
RHS, if you hard code, DevOps is not required.
Not required, yeah, it's that simple. That's only for yours.
Your keys get exposed when you check in the code.
But you are not supposed to check in the code. It's only for your developer version. Okay. Okay, let's move ahead. I think.
So any configuration changes we will do in the DevOps folder.
So you have to go to Sunbird DevOps, create that Ansible variable, and that gets injected into this.
That is for the pipeline.
No,
No, everything gets managed from that.
Not from the local.
No, local for your developer version it is, but for the production version or for the environment deployment and all, Sunbird DevOps. So you'll have Ansible playbooks which will run for every environment. So it will introduce its own variables and it gets injected. Okay, now we'll move ahead. Sir, let's move ahead. We are done? Okay, so this is our second session. So the agenda that was covered was, let me just rerun through. The agenda was how to set up a Sunbird. All the jargons, how do they get connected to form what is a Sunbird. Okay, these are all the things that we have covered right now. And I have one more session which I will run today. When do we have a coffee break? Do we have a coffee break?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock? Ah, see?
4 or 4:30, I don't know.
4:30, yeah. Can someone check?
Yeah, I'll just check.
Ah. So if that is the case, then probably we can take a break and then we can reconvene and then we can get started with the next agenda. So someone had a question on this, right? Especially on this step, the setting up of Sunbird-ED. The tenant. So the tenant work comes in here. This is a tenant work, the org.
When we will discuss about API.
So we will discuss in the next one. So basically, how does the front end connects to different APIs? What are the different building blocks? All those things we'll talk about.
Especially the read API.
Yes. User workflows is the one where we are going to decide on how the user workflow would translate into API calls. What are the dependencies? How are we supposed to know it? I think that is very critical for some of the.
Sharath, we can take a break now,
Huh.
or it is 4:30.
But is coffee is available?
Yeah.
Should we break for the coffee?
We will break,
And
our
probably
room will break.